Hey guys, welcome to the last 5 chapters of Hyper-Borea, chapter 20 being the end. We're coming in close. If you have any predictions for the ending, or if you want to comment and talk about the stuff you've liked, I invite you to do so in any of these chapters. As well, remember to like the video, and in the description we have the link to the Amazon page, which we have the Kindle version and the physical copy that you can buy. The Kindle edition is only $2.99. Even if you plan on not reading it at all, but listening to it, it'd be super helpful if you bought that. I appreciate you guys, and I hope to hear what you've enjoyed about the book so far. Chapter 16. It was a cloudy start to the day, the sun hidden from sight by a blanket of gray. Caleb and I sat at breakfast, dark circles under his eyes from a tireless night. We had returned to Juan Berto's, a name I still had trouble pronouncing, to feast upon scrumptious carne asada burritos. I had left him in the creek after fashioning a shelter of the thick greenery so close to the water, my spells making construction fast, a woven treehouse of branches and wood complete with hammocks for rest. Though the comfort of our lodgings couldn't have been entirely the blame of his restlessness, it was our long naps and his foolish worry over friends that had robbed Caleb of any more sleep. As I said, I had left him and flown as a bird to a nearby house, unlocking the door with magic, then casting as the owners of the home awoke, after the smallest dog I had ever seen would not stop barking at me. I did not harm any of them, I simply knocked them unconscious with a mind-altering spell. The male owner of the house was a build of slightly larger than Caleb, so what would be average? I found in his bedroom a few articles of clothing and quickly returned to Caleb along with a few blankets. I apologize that we had to leave most of your belongings behind, young Caleb. I spoke while devouring the delicious food. The anatomy of the burrito had to be explained to me earlier, and I savored the carne asada, the guacamole, and the fresh tomato salsa. But one must make do while adventuring. Today we're going to go look for everyone, right? Yes, of course. I drank from a plastic goblet the size of my head, the sweet taste of horchata coating my throat. It was so sweet, I had need to dilute it with water. First, we must find a place for you to hide from the FBI. They mustn't capture you while I search. Perhaps we may purchase a vehicle and drive to the edge of the desert. To what extent is their capability to track us? Caleb began to answer, but then his gaze shifted over my shoulder toward the clerk's counter of the fine establishment we patronized, the counter being to my back so I could keep my eyes to the front door. I turned to see where he was looking and saw the large communication screen on the wall, showing moving pictures of Sedona. The clerk, a fellow from the land of Mexico, as explained by Caleb, looked over to us, as the runt boy waved for his attention. "Can you turn that sound up?" The man reached below the counter and complied, watching for himself as he too noticed the land in which we inhabited being shown. The woman in the screen was herself standing in front of a screen. She was presenting the moving images to us and narrating in an even, almost monotone voice. "Yes, Rick, there appears to be something going on in the greater Sedona area. A scary thought with it being the weekend. Thousands have driven up from the Phoenix Valley to escape late summer heat for the higher altitude and beautiful scenery. Fox 10 has helicopter footage of a convoy of military forces from the National Guard, Marines, and Army bases around Arizona driving that way." The screen showed a bird's-eye view of the highway with long columns of large vehicles. "Tanks?" Caleb exclaimed, and I saw what I believed he was referring to. I had seen them named when using young Sayman's computer. They were massive, armored vehicles, with a cannon on the top of the tracks, capable of firing explosive charges that could level small buildings. I hoped they had not sent them to find me. "Margaret," a man on the screen now spoke, "tell us about the disturbing cell phone footage being shared on social media." The screen transitioned back to the woman from before, and the screen, within the screen, now showed a desert scene just outside the city of Sedona. The same red rock monuments that could be viewed out of the windows of Juan Berto's were now on full display, but again this was outside the city proper. Hikers and tourists fled for their lives, the person operating the image capture device in motion as well, causing the screen to appear bumpy and blurred at times. Margaret narrated as the scenes played out. "Rick, you can see people in this Facebook video fleeing in a chaotic scene, and at first it's not clear why. The screen then freezes, the image revealing a golem of stone. No, 4 of them, appearing with a red flash of light. What these are, Margaret circled the screen with a pin to highlight the golems, is unclear. More footage played, showing the golems grabbing people and retreating to stone circles on the ground, then disappearing and reappearing in red flashes of light. The clerk and Caleb both gasped as the screen immediately cut out, the people in pictures gone, and a harsh tone accompanied by a blue screen and yellow letters that spelled out emergency broadcast. The screen's letters changed, and a voice far more monotoned than the people previously displayed read aloud, "This is an emergency broadcast. This is not a drill." I sipped my horchata in anticipation. How often this happened in this society I was unaware, but my guess was rarely. Caleb and the man from Mexico were glued to the screen. "The city of Sedona and the county of Yavapai are under attack. This is not a drill. Secure your homes against intruders. Barricade yourself in your bathrooms with food for 5 days. The city of Sedona and the county of Yavapai are under attack. Do not go outside." There was a pause, followed by a loud tonal noise which threatened the integrity of my more sensitive eardrums. The message repeated itself. Showing great initiative, the man from Mexico threw off his apron and ran through the kitchen and out the back door, promptly followed by the rest of the small staff at Walberto's. I turned toward Caleb and inhaled the rest of my burrito, my words coming out garbled between bites. "Well, this complicates our current predicament," I ate on, thinking of those stone golems, likely creations of the shaman I had seen in my dream. Those skinwalkers were more of a threat than I had believed. Yes, this was much more complicated than before. "This complicates things?" Caleb threw his burrito down, offended at my observation. "Well, yes, golems and armies were not exactly part of my plan here." "Oh, you have a plan? When are we going to go find my friends?" "Our friends," I tried to remind him of my affection for the group. I needed to soothe him. Who knew what I would need to know, and what I would need him for in the coming chaos? "I admit, my plans have been a little loose, but I have been making adjustments with new information. This will be an adjustment now." "Adjustments? First the FBI, and now the military are coming for us. Stonemen are kidnapping people, and Kyle, Sean, and Sylvia are lost, maybe even dead, in the desert. And you are talking about adjustments?" I dabbed at my lips with a napkin, cleaning my face of the delicious salsa and avocado. I licked my lips a couple of times and savored the echoes of flavor imparted by the scrumptious breakfast. "Caleb," I reasoned now, "our friends will be discovered by the military, most likely, and rescued. As far as the stonemen go, and the witch, lest you forget, they are the purpose of my mission here. Remember, I am a Grand Master of Alfheim." His demeanor softened as I spoke. "They stand in my way, and I will destroy them." I smiled. Caleb let out a long sigh. "I'm just really scared." He crossed his arms. I don't want them to die." "I am confident they shall not. If we find that they have incurred tremendous injury, recall that I am an experienced healer." "Okay." Caleb sat up straight. "Okay." In my concentration on Caleb, I had failed as sentinel, but to be fair, so had Caleb. From my vantage point, I did not see the large black vehicle arrive, and Caleb did not detect the man into the kitchen door that had been left ajar. My heightened hearing picked up the movement over the tones and speaking of the screen on the wall. The door burst open, and a man from the FBI, who had led the charge into our hotel room, now held a gun aimed at my face. "Sovos, put your hands in the air. Do not try and run. We have the place surrounded." As confirmation, a man from behind me spoke too. "We're not here to hurt either of you. Don't even think about running." Their threats amused me. They felt it necessary to assert their authority, even when they knew it to be a fabrication, a gamble that perhaps I might, in the smallest of chances, believe them to be a real influence upon my will. Caleb looked to me, his eyes wide. As he measured me, he began to calm. He was learning. I waved my hand, and my plastic goblet began hovering above the table. My next actions and words were carefully chosen to demonstrate who was in fact in control. The goblet floated over to the machine which dispensed the tasty beverage, and it filled itself, hovering back to me, all while I spoke. "Well, if it isn't our friends from the FBI, come to strike another deal that you will not uphold." I subtly manipulated my and Caleb's shields mentally, strengthening them should one of these fools lose their nerve and erroneously fire their guns at us. "There are a lot of dead bodies in the desert because of you. You need to come with us." The horchata was back in my grasp, and I sipped it from my straw with an air of disregard. I seem to remember that your friends, I turned. The man I had healed was there, with his gun pointing toward me. What was his name? Lance? He was the man who had come in by the back door. Your friends left many people lying in the sand as well. I eyed this man who spoke for the pair. He was not the same one from before, but he was well worn. He had not slept. I suspected he was there, too, that night. I read his mind. Images came to me of his perspective, in the early morning light, shooting the zombies of the witch and running from her champion. You were there, I confirmed aloud. You sparred with her champion. He flinched visibly, his grip tightening on the firearm. He was a lawman, and I did not like killing those who kept order. If he fired at me, however, I would be ruthless in the example I made of him. The air was thick with tension, despite my relaxed posture and apathetic caricature. The door opened and a third man walked in, removing a device from his ear. I had not seen him before, but he had a way of command about him. He was shorter than the others, and had skin the same tone as the clerk from Mexico that had departed not long ago. He also wore a bag over one shoulder. "That's enough, both of you," he spoke with authority, and included me in his rebuke. He was a soldier. If not now, then at some point. His black hair cut short and close, and his posture and gait that of precision. "Sovos of Alfheim. My name is Michael Mendoza, and I'm the Deputy Assistant Special Agent for the FBI in Arizona." He grabbed a chair and pulled it up to our table, quite presumptively, but I allowed it. "Lance, give me a burrito," he snapped. The fellow I healed lowered his firearm, then nodded. "Yes, sir." "We know why you are here, Sovos." I arched my eyebrow, curious what he'd say. "Your friend, Sean Cooper, told us everything." Caleb sat up straight. "Sean's alive?" "I don't know a Sean," I maintained plausible deniability. "Don't play games with me, wizard, and I won't play games with you." I doubted this man ever smiled in his life. "You are here for an artifact, and you won't be here long. Time is your enemy. We can help each other, or the entire might of the United States can be against you. I know we probably can't stop you, but we can most definitely slow you down." I leaned back, sipping my horchata, my eyes narrowed in thought. I did not want to be at war with a shaman, Gil Ruel, and the United States, whatever that was. "Let me think about it." I made a stand, but was halted by the Mendoza fellow's body language. "Unfortunately, we don't have time for that." The man named Lance placed a burrito in front of his superior. "Thank you, Lance." He directed his next order to the first man through the door. "Jack, take a seat and relax." Jack did as he was told without delay. This man Mendoza had the respect of his subordinates. He seemed trustworthy. But I was weary after the disfavor shown to me by Lance and the one named Doug. "The cavalry is an hour out. I won't be in charge when they arrive. This is your last chance to strike a deal before my replacement comes, and you better believe he won't be as accommodating. General Scarfield wanted to drop bombs on this restaurant until nothing moved once we saw that the employees had left. There's a drone above us now, ready to do just that." I nodded, pretending to know what a drone was. "What are you suggesting, then, and will this General Scarfield respect a compromise between us?" "Yes, he's given me his word, and he won't go back on that." I nodded, and he continued, speaking, while opening his shoulder bag that was now in his lap. He set what looked like a smaller version of the screen on the wall down on the table, and opened it like a clamshell, revealing a screen with a set of letters for typing like Sean's computer. From the west, the witch set up a command center at the Rojo Vieja Hotel and Spa. An interactive map was before me, zooming in from high altitude on a compound of finely crafted buildings in a large yard. In a large yard atop a steep overlook was a portal, with dozens of armored men marching out and toward the road. It was still high up, but it looked like a void portal. "The witch that Sean informed us is Gil Ruel, codenamed Zodiac, has been marching an army through that portal." He clicked a button and several still images cycled onto the screen. One was of Gil Ruel and her champion, talking with the shadow man of an officer's rank. I knew of the Lord of the Void, Vizic, but had not had many dealings with him. I had researched him somewhat when preparing for the War of Rekostog, given I knew that many of those who would join the opposition to us had magical relationships with the School of the Void. I had read that Vizic could offer an army of 5,000, called a Fade. Yes, a Fade. But one had to pay a steep price for it. The image cycled again and showed the Fade marching in dark gray armor and jet-black banners towards Sedona, the clouds in the sky causing the overcast weather likely the result of Gilurel's magic, the void men at their strongest when avoiding the direct light of the sun. The image cycled again, and it was obelisks for maintaining mind slaves, The floating contraption served to amplify the seeress's magic and multiply her reach. Then the image was a video, and the ghouls of Gilurel were dragging people from their homes. Her army will be in the city. He glanced at his watch on his wrist. 10 minutes. Both zombies and shadowmen. He then showed images of the golems of stone, water, and trees. They were taking prisoners, likely to harvest their souls to make more golems. I thought the vortexes were a myth, but they are portals. To where, I don't know. We haven't seen Zodiac zombies or shadow people with the animated elementals. We don't know if they're the same force, but he was referring now to a video of stone men marching down the highway in rank and file, are coming from the northeast. 3 armies set to collide. When will they be in the city? I asked. This was all turning out to be very exciting. I could envision it now, the 3 fighting a brutally bloody campaign for supremacy over this town nestled in the Red Rocks. It was the type of confusion I could seize the advantage of, carrying out my own devices while the parties were busy with each other. Yes, this was well for me, the dumb witch drawing the eyes of the one who owned the staff I intended to steal. I would laugh, given it was so perfect, had the Mendoza fellow not kept talking. 10 minutes. He answered my question. Within an hour they will be in the city center, our army arriving right after. So what is it you want from us? I kept Caleb in the negotiations. If you can destroy them both, like you did the zombies in the desert, we will dedicate everything we can to get you that artifact. But we want you gone after that, and we don't ever want you to return, which isn't asking a lot, considering you'll be going home with the full moon anyway. That was an attractive offer, but there was much that this Mendoza fellow and the forces he represented, did not know. I could certainly use their excellent spycraft to find and annihilate Gilurel. I could be out the door in moments, flying toward her, dropping down into her hotel, and obliterating her from existence. But then I'd have to deal with her army, and after that I'd have to find the shaman, navigate their portals, kill them all, and their army too. That would take a lot of time, and would open me up to a lot of risk. Had I the time, this could be done, and it would be a pleasurable task indeed, but I was constrained. Unfortunately, I felt my best position was to let the chaos reign, to find the staff, then clean up quickly thereafter. Yes, many more likely would die, but it was necessary. I had to think of Alfheim. There was a nation depending on me. Our best chance of success lies in one avenue of attack. I pointed to the device on the table. This. Laptop? Caleb offered. Yes, this laptop. Can it show me every one of the vortexes discovered? Yes, we can do that, Mendoza confirmed. I desire from you a map of the portals. I must first navigate the caverns under Sedona's Red Rocks. From within I will dismantle the army of the elementals. They are the ones who possess the artifact, and once it is in my hands, the rest of the foes we face shall fall like a knife through warmed butter. I smiled at the thought. You must hold them, keep them distracted with your army until then. Mendoza mulled over my words in his mind, doing his calculations as they came up in his head. How can we trust that you won't just leave after getting your precious artifact? I scoffed. My dear friend Caleb and I were viciously betrayed by your subordinates. I have upheld every oath sworn to your men. Fine. He stood, holding out his hand. Deal. Sir! Jack stood, but his boss motioned for him to sit. He complied. I did not know why he held his hand out, but I replied, A fine deal. I accept my end. I was giddy with anticipation. My excitement had to wait, however, for my senses perked up, my ears hearing something out the open door. It was wings. A large, rather demented-looking bat crashed through a window, shattering it and sending the glass across the floor. Chaos erupted as it screeched and took to the air in the small dining room. What in God's name is that? Where did it come from? We're gonna die! It was Caleb who shouted the last phrase. I quickly reached my hand into my ingredients bag and severed the large bat's head with a thought. It flapped about, slamming into the tile ground. Then its nerves twitched several times, causing a wing and a leg to spasm. Everyone in the room was on their feet, weapons drawn. Careful to avoid the rapidly pooling blood, I kicked the bat with my jeweled slipper until it rolled over. Sipping my delicious horchata, I examined the creature out loud. This was once a man. I could see the underbelly was the skin color of a person, the hairs across the hide like those of a man's head. It was like a bat, but not really a bat. At the command of the elemental army are a team of skinwalker shaman. It appears they are using some prisoners to make into vile creatures such as this. Expect many more. Jesus, Jack mumbled. I was not sure what the holy man had to do with this. Mendoza holstered his weapon after looking at the creature over in disgust. We need to get back to the police station and finish fortifying before the armies get here. Let's move out, everyone. I followed the members of the FBI, giving Caleb a reassuring nod. The runt boy drew close and whispered, "Should we ask about Kyle and Sylvia?" In all the excitement, I had forgotten about their existence. Silly me. I was delighted for once, though, that Caleb's lack of skill in whispering was overheard by Jack. "Your other friends got away into the desert." "They did?" Caleb exclaimed in excitement as we all entered the black vehicle. An SUV I believed it to be called. I noted that Jack was lying when he had claimed we were surrounded. Not a soul budged on the street. Everyone had heeded the emergency broadcast and was staying indoors. As the vehicle's engine was awakened, I cocked my head to look out at the sky, curious to see what a drone was. "Yeah, we haven't accounted for them, though. They may still be out camping in the desert, or they hitchhiked." He saw the worry on Caleb's face. "Don't worry, kid. They're smart. I'm sure they're fine." The SUV at the control of Lance found its way to the main road and began accelerating. Few cars were driving around, and those that we did pass had occupants with panic-stricken faces. Mendoza worked the knobs on the front of the car, and a voice was amplified through it. It was the emergency message that we had heard being repeated on the screen at Juanberto's. He stopped and leaned forward, peering out at the sky. "We've got company. More bats." He drew his pistol and opened his window. "Step on it, rookie." The vehicle accelerated. The police station was, like almost all buildings in the city, on a well-manicured street with the beautiful desert shade trees and other flora. The destination was in sight, but the sky filled with the ugly, hairy creatures, and they descended on our SUV, the exterior pounded by large, fleshy bodies about the size of a dog. "Let me from the car and I will disperse them," I called to the front seat as Mendoza fired his handgun at a bat that was nose-diving straight for the window. "Get the wizard out," Mendoza called, yelling the last word. The door clicked, and Jack leaned over Caleb to open the handle for me. I stepped out and fired a tremendous fireball into the sky. It erupted and fell a dozen bats. I fired lightning bolts, then, which struck their targets and even bounced to more. Falling bodies struck and dented the SUV, shattering windows. Cracks of gunfire echoed as police exited their building and fired up at the bats. More and more kept coming, and among the foliage and a cactus, a red light erupted. What have we here? It was a vortex in the heart of town. A dozen stone men stood scrunched, shoulder to shoulder. They fanned out and split into two teams. 6 ran for the station, and 6 came for us at the SUV. Well, specifically for me. They were drawn to me. There was only one way to destroy a golem, and that was to disable more than half of it. Once 51% was damaged or destroyed, it would fall out of use. I fired concentrated beams of energy from my hands, which found their targets, the golem's chests. The rock was shorn away, the stone in the periphery to the blast melting, hot red. The golems fell. The vortex flashed again, and bats fell upon my party from the skies. I focused on the golems, given the bullets of my allies bounced harmlessly from them. It was chaos, yes, the chaos I was expecting. The Battle of Sedona had begun. Where do shadow men come from? It was a thought on Gilrel's mind as she marched about halfway into the column of her army from the void. They were closing in on the city, passing through the outskirts now along the highway. She had spells ready for defense in case they were ambushed by Sovos or the local authorities. Mostly shields, force shields, to guard against spells and projectiles, while the void men identified the source of the assault and launched their counterattack. Observing them march, they appeared as regular humans. She wished she could ask, but each one is as tight-lipped as their lord. Masters at the college suspect they are men who sold their souls to the void, just as she had done. Would she appear as they did when she left this world for theirs? Would she be marched off to another dimension to fight as a mercenary? Fade Overseer Bennick marched at her side, and he interrupted her thoughts with his voice that sounded like someone breathing in gasps of air. I have sent out Fade mages north and south to open and sustain portals. They will wait for your obelisks in order to siphon the power from them. Gilrel nodded, mindful that either flank of their column was a horde of about 1,000 of her mindless slaves. When they arrived at the neighborhoods of the city, she expected that number to quadruple. Overseer Bennick did not speak much, his voice similar in tone and intonation as his lord, a raspy, almost cringe-inducing sound. His armor was dark gray, like the steel of his fade or army, though the higher-ranking voidmen and the elite soldiers possessed winged helmets and shoulder pauldrons. As well, their weapons were laced with void-poisoned edges. Void poison being a derivative of the less potent void venom from void eels. It slows movement and in high enough doses paralyzes opponents. Gilrel was stoic in expression, but inside she was smiling. Sovos would not be able to stop her. No. One Grandmaster against what would be a force of 11,000 and growing? The witch thought of her husband. He would be proud. Yes, he would be proud. Kyle and Sylvia watched in horror as the leader of the skinwalkers, McLan, ordered cages open and people dragged out by the stone men, unable to resist the strength of the elemental. They were unceremoniously laid on altars that had been fashioned in the last 2 hours. From there, McLan fired black lightning into their bodies before walking to his next victim. The person, man, woman, or child, writhed under the weight of the golem before contorting and splitting, much like watching Kyotl and Qualachi change into their animal forms, except worse because of the end result. Bats, coyotes, spiders, and other creatures were the end product, but with human features intact here and there, dead eyes and open mouths. Each animal was oversized and ugly, with human flesh still visible here and there. It was a waking nightmare. "I can't look anymore." Sylvia moved from the bars and cried. They were both a mess, starving and beat up. Their captors had tried to feed them, but they refused to eat the meat that came from a source they did not know. Kyle realized that they would be force-fed eventually. He knew they were bait and couldn't be allowed to die. McLan had a habit of yelling as he worked. It must have been whatever was on his mind. "Yes, my creations, through the portals and into my red lands. Find the medicine man and bring him to me." His spawn did his bidding, arising from their altars, from the pits they were mined from in the case of the rockmen, and entered the red flashing vortexes, one after the other. Kyle prayed, sometimes with Sylvia, but mostly alone, praying and praying for this nightmare to end. The fight into the police station was a battle in itself, the streets flooded with the shaman's creations. There were so many, I was impressed by his power amplified by the artifact. I wondered about his talent without it. There were several stair steps leading up to the main doors of glass, that were the entrance to the police headquarters. I stood atop them, firing spells and casting bubbles of force shield where I could, while the members of the FBI and police who were engaging the bats and stone men retreated back to the cover of the building. I was the last through the door and cast a shield in totality around the front steps. Bats and golems rammed themselves against it to no avail. It would hold until I desired it to do otherwise. At least, against these foes, that was true. "Caleb!" Young Saman ran to us past injured policemen nursing their wounds from bat bites and stone punches. "Sean!" Caleb hugged his friend in a touching reunion. In fact, I believe I saw tears. "I totally thought you were dead, dude," Caleb gushed. "You were worried about me? I drove away while you stayed behind against a zombie horde." They laughed together. "Good thing we played all those Call of Duty zombie games." They hugged again, myself not understanding their reference. "Sovos," Mendoza approached me, a cut on his forehead with dried blood that had tracked down a few inches above his eyebrow. "I think it would be best if you left here. They seem to be after you. We'll be fine. You go and get the artifact." The FBI man stopped speaking as Sean pushed past his shoulder. The soldier stepped aside and Sean wrapped his arms around me in an embrace. "I knew you would make it." Sean nestled his head into my chest. He smelled like body odor. I patted his back. "Nothing can defeat me, young Saman. I guarantee it." A crowd had formed around the doors, both looking at the bats and stone men outside, but also looking at me, a real wielder of magic in their midst. One face stood out to me. I had seen it before, but where? My recollection returned to the home of Sean and Sylvia, the beautiful blonde on the glass screen that was said to be Sean's crush. I whispered to the lad then, "Is that, by chance, the Princess Jenna?" Sean's face flushed red, for what reason I do not know. "Yes," he whispered, not very quietly. "Her family was having breakfast nearby when the news came out about the attack." I held young Saman at arm's length then, an idea coming to my mind. "Let it be known," I declared, "that this lad is my apprentice, and I appoint him to advise in my stead, while I am off on my errand." I said it loudly enough for all in the room to hear. The esteem associated with the title should be enough to raise Sean to Jenna's league. Mendoza, who stood not far off, turned and nodded. Sure thing. He moved for the door, now that our reunion was wrapping up. The rest of the armies will be here any minute. I really must insist. Do not fear, I said loudly. We shall be victorious. I turned from my young friends and the many concerned faces of the police officers and stepped outside. Once there, I was a bird, flying far and fast upward. The bats changed their course to attack me, but their scrawny wings were not fit to catch up to a hawk that I was. I stole a look back, the remainder of the stone men dispersing as their target departed. I fixed my sight on one of the red rocks and flew to it, on the way surveying the earth below with my superior hawk vision. I could see on the western edge the armies of the void filling the streets in neat files, a stark contrast to the countless more streets filled with the mindless zombies of the witch. I transformed into myself at the red rock, high above and far away from the many threats. From my bag I pulled a screen given to me by Mendoza. Upon it was a bird's-eye view of the region. Red dots marked each detected vortex. There were so many. How did I determine where to begin? I looked it over and counted about 50. This would take some time, trial and error. How many led to the caverns? How many led to other places besides the dock below the red rock? I had no idea. There did not seem to be any patterns, any methodology, at least none that I recognized, despite my familiarity with the magic arts. Again, it appeared this would take some time. But a strange sensation formed in my mind. It was a stranger, but felt familiar and benevolent. "Who are you?" I asked aloud. "Where have I detected you before?" There came no response, but my mind was indeed being invaded, as would happen in a spell one used to speak to someone with their mouth or ears, without their mouth or ears, to speak directly into someone's mind. I did not hear words, but I felt drawn to the map again. Looking upon it, I felt an unnatural desire to fly to a portal to the northeast. There was no logic to the feeling. The portal was not distinct from any other in the area. Was this a trap? The benevolent, familiar feeling influenced me, thinking that, no, it was not a trap, but that could be another trick. A trick within a trick. This was exciting. I would give it a chance. I did not fear these shaman. If this was their best attempt to defeat me, I'd find pleasure in seeing them fail catastrophically. I would turn the trap back onto them, flay the skins from their flesh, and take their staff that they were so unworthy of wielding. I flew now northeast, toward the dot on the map. The overcast sky muted the colors below me, the air pressure different with the cloud cover. I flew lower with the more favorable winds. I had a different feeling, an old familiar one. I was alone. I enjoyed my adventures with a party, albeit a small one. Recruiting a local guide, as I had done with young Seaman and his friends, was important to me. Having someone to watch my back was as well. I was prone to hyper-focus, to obsess. It was not humility that drew me to others, but genius. Off on my own, I had more time to think, to appreciate my surroundings, but I was conscious of the trade-offs that solitude entailed. I flapped my wings, achieving some lift, then stretched them out to carry me. I observed the beautifully breathtaking red rocks as I flew, the contrast to the green plants below on that rust-colored soil. This was a beautiful realm. I was flying over a highway now, which cut its way north. Several columns of stone men marched south towards Sedona to join the battle. It wasn't much longer before I started my descent, spotting a mountainous rock that looked just like a bell. It was as if a giant the size of a continent had laid it down and forgotten it there among the greenery. The vortex I was after was at the top, and I came in for a landing. I spotted 2 stone golems and an old woman staring southward at the city. I flapped my wings, avoiding her gaze, and coming around to the north side. Once positioned, I tucked my limbs close to my small body and put my beak out. Like a missile, I dove toward the 3 figures on top of the bell rock. It was about 30 feet up that I transformed into myself, and executed an aerial somersault in order to change the position of my head and feet. Now, with my legs toward the ground, I was 10 feet in the air, and I fired a laser of arcane energy out of my hands and into the 2 stone men who stood side by side. They exploded brilliantly. Then I shot air out from my feet at a great velocity. The rush of wind slowed my descent, and it flowed powerfully, with the added effect of my trajectory, causing the gust to slam into the old woman, who was at the edge. From the wind, she was thrown from the rock with a scream. My feet on firm ground, I stumbled a moment before catching myself. I squinted my eyes as I moved my foot away from a piece of molten rock that was a golem moments ago. Spotting the woman falling through the air some ways off, I cast a spell. Her plummet was arrested. Then she came flying back toward me, like someone was reeling in a fish with much strength. Her scream grew louder and louder until she was 10 feet away from me, hanging over thin air. "Quit your howling, woman," I ordered. Her screams continued another moment, died down so she could breathe, then continued, then finally died down for good. She hung in the air, helplessly spinning. "Put me down! Somewhere safe, please!" "Answers first. Do not even think about using a spell, or I will cause your internal organs to explode all at once." My tone was exacting. You're him. The medicine man the chief warned us about." "Yes, I am Grandmaster Sovos of Alfheim. Now quit your babbling. What's through that vortex?" "I cannot tell you anything. He will kill me." "Remember what I said about your organs? Or perhaps I should just drop you." "No," she wailed through tears. "Okay. It's a portal to the cavern, under the Devil's Kitchen sinkhole, the home of Talek." "Which one is Talek?" "The nightmare in the depths, the lord of the black water." It was a scream of fear from her now. "Oh, he will feed me to him for this," she cried. "Is it a trap?" "What?" "Don't play games with me, stupid woman. Is your chief hoping I go into that portal so he may kill me?" "Kill you? No, he needs you. Your magic powers this red land." I believed her. Her mind revealed that she was telling the truth, and her fear was palpable. "Well then, witch, here's what I will do. I'm going to—" Before I could conclude speaking, she grabbed her black hair and turned into a bird, a crow attempting to flee. Why she hadn't done that before, I did not know, though I couldn't have her escape. I had warned her. I waved my hand, and the crow exploded in a ball of feathers and blood.